The dawn after her wedding rose soft and red over the MacLeod camp, painting the glen walls with fire. Smoke from the morning fires curled upward, carrying the smell of peat and heather. Elowen sat outside the stone dwelling she'd been given, a rugged shelter of granite and turf, feeling the weight of her new life settle like sand in her chest. She had slept little. Every sound of the night had been strange. The cry of foxes, the faraway chanting, the rhythm of pipes that seemed to echo through the ground itself. When she finally opened her eyes at dawn, she was startled to find that her husband, Nantan MacLeod, or Callum MacLeod, as the mainlanders knew him, was gone. Only his blanket lay folded neatly beside hers, a quiet sign of courtesy. It wasn't what she expected from a man of war. When he returned, he carried a basin of cool water and a folded blanket embroidered with geometric symbols. "You should wash," he said in his calm, low voice. "The day will be hot." Elowen hesitated before nodding, murmuring, "Thanks." He set the basin down without looking directly at her, then straightened and spoke again. "You will meet my people today. Some will not like you. They do not trust easily, but if you walk with respect, they will see. I don't belong here," she whispered, though part of her wondered if saying so would make any difference. He met her eyes, gray and unflinching. "Neither did my mother once." She frowned. "Your mother?" "She was of the mainland," he said quietly, "taken from a village near Inverness when she was a girl. But she stayed. She learned our ways. When she died, our people said her spirit rides with the eagles." Elowen didn't know what to say. In his words, there was no bitterness, only a deep, old sadness that felt like the islands themselves. That day she followed him through the camp where women ground grain and children ran barefoot among the dwellings. The men watched her in silence, not cruelly but wearily, as one might watch a creature from another world. She caught glimpses of herself in their eyes, pale, stiff-backed, foreign. A few women approached, offering her woven bread and soft smiles. One, older and lined with years, touched Elowen's hand gently. "Seabird," she said in halting English. "You strong. He choose well." Elowen looked to Nantan in confusion. He translated softly. "She says, you have a brave heart." A strange warmth stirred in her then. Not love. Not yet. But something that eased the fear a little. As days passed, she learned more of the man called Callum MacLeod. He was not just a warrior, but a trader, dealing horses, hides, and silver with nearby towns. He could read and write, spoke English, Gaelic, and the island dialects alike. When he rode into Portree, even the magistrate tipped his hat. Once she asked him why he had chosen the name Callum MacLeod. He smiled faintly. "My teacher gave it to me when I was a boy." He said, "The name is steady. It survives what others cannot. I took it for my own." "You had a teacher?" He nodded. "A missionary. Before your people closed his mission, he taught me words. Words can build bridges," he said. "I have tried to remember that." At night, he taught her some of his own language. Simple words at first. Water, sun, heart. He laughed softly when she stumbled over the pronunciation, a sound that startled her for its warmth. And slowly, without realizing when it began, Elowen stopped feeling like a prisoner. One afternoon, while fetching water from the stream that cut through the valley, she heard the sharp hiss of an adder. She froze, spotting the coiled serpent only inches from her skirts. Panic stole her breath. Before she could move, a blur of motion swept between them. Nantan, his blade flashing once in the sun. The serpent fell still. He turned to her, eyes dark with concern. "You must always look where you step," he said, breath quick. She could only nod, trembling. You saved me." He sheathed the blade, his expression unreadable. "You were under my protection until death." That night, when fever from shock overtook her, she woke to find him sitting beside her, cooling her brow with damp cloths, whispering words she couldn't understand. His touch was careful, never bold. His gaze turned away, except when necessary. By morning, her fever broke. She opened her eyes to find the first light touching his face, strong, solemn, and handsome in a way she had never noticed before. "You should rest," he said softly. "You watched all night?" He didn't answer, only poured her water from a clay jug. Something unspoken passed between them then, fragile as the island dawn. A respect that neither had asked for, but both could feel. When she could stand again, he brought her something wrapped in deer hide. A small wooden box, its lid carved with a symbol she had not seen before. He placed it in her hands. "Your wedding gift," he said simply. She turned it over, curious. It was heavy, but silent. "What's inside?" His lips curved in that quiet half-smile of his. "Something you will understand when the time is right." Do not open it until your heart knows what. He looked out toward the cliffs beyond their camp, that not all gifts are meant to be touched. Some must be felt. She wanted to ask more, but he had already risen and walked away, leaving her to stare at the mysterious box in the sun. Over the following weeks, she saw sides of him that no mainland woman ever had. He spoke with his warriors about crops and defense, never raising his voice. He traded fair with the shepherds, even when they treated him with suspicion. He was feared by some, respected by others. But among his people, his word was law. Elowen began to see the truth the world refused to admit. This man was not a savage, but a leader, one born of patience, pain, and pride. Still, there were nights she wept quietly, remembering the Highlands, the rain on the kirk roof, her father's voice reading psalms. Yet when she looked out at the endless northern stars, she could not deny the strange beauty of this place. The silence, the space, the way the wind seemed to sing her name through the glens. And sometimes, when she caught Nantan watching her across the fire, that same wind seemed to whisper something else, something she dared not name. One evening, the old woman who had first welcomed her approached again, smiling as she handed Elowen a woven shawl. "For wife of Nantan MacLeod," she said. "He brave man, he need brave woman." Elowen thanked her, her heart fluttering oddly. Later, when she told Nantan what the woman had said, he gave a small, knowing nod. "She is right. You are stronger than you think, seabird." She looked at him, then really looked at the scar on his jaw, the steadiness in his eyes, the quiet sorrow that never quite left his face, and for the first time, Elowen Vance wondered if her coming here had been fate, not misfortune. As the fire burned low that night, she touched the wooden box beside her bed. She still hadn't opened it, but for the first time, she wasn't sure she wanted to. Autumn crept into the Isle of Skye with a kind of quiet menace. The days were still fierce with heat, but the nights grew cold, the air sharp with the smell of peat smoke. The island shifted its colors, ochre turning to crimson, heather blooms giving way to dust. Elowen had learned by then to rise before dawn and grind grain with the other women. Her hands had blistered at first, but calluses came quickly. She wore a woven skirt now instead of her old blue dress, and her sunburnt skin had darkened to a bronze glow. The people no longer stared when she passed, some even nodded in greeting, but peace in the camp was fragile as glass. Rumors drifted from Portree, cattle stolen from the shepherds, wagons raided along the valley trail. Elowen overheard the men talk in low voices around the fire, the way soldiers did before battle. The name of the islanders was once again whispered with fear in town, and with bitterness in the hills. One afternoon, Nantan rode in from the trading post, his horse lathered and eyes grim. He dismounted, tossing the reins to a boy, and went straight to where Elowen was mending a torn blanket. "Pack what you need," he said quietly. "We may have to leave for the high country." She looked up sharply. "Leave? Why?" "The shepherds say my people stole cattle from their lands." Her heart clenched. "Did they?" He shook his head. "No. But outlaws ride under our shadow. Mainland eyes see hoofprints and think them ours. The magistrate sent men to investigate. It will not end with questions." She rose, gripping the fabric in her hands. "Can't you speak to them? You trade with them. They trust you." Nantan gave a faint, weary smile. "Trust dies quicker than love, seabird." That night, fires burned higher and sentries doubled their watch. Elowen lay awake, listening to the distant cry of foxes and the whisper of pipes. Fear and sorrow twisted together inside her, not just for herself, but for the people she had come to understand, if not yet call her own. By morning, she made a decision. When Nantan saddled his horse to ride to Portree, she stepped in front of him. "I'm coming with you," she said firmly. His brows furrowed. "No, it's dangerous. The townspeople may not see you as one of them now." "Then let them see me as your wife," she said. "Maybe that will remind them that we are not enemies." For a moment he stared at her, then nodded once. "Very well, but you stay close." They rode through the moors together, he on his black stallion, she on a smaller bay mare. The air shimmered with heat. From a distance, Portree looked peaceful. But as they drew closer, Elowen saw men gathered by the square, rifles slung across their shoulders. The magistrate stepped forward, looking startled to see her. "Miss Vance," he began, then caught himself. "Mrs. MacLeod." Elowen dismounted and faced him squarely. "You know my husband is an honest man, magistrate. Tell them so." The magistrate's eyes shifted nervously. "It ain't that simple, ma'am. Some folks say they seen islanders near the Murphyland the night the cattle went missing. And some folks will see what they want to see," she replied, her voice firm as steel. "Do you have proof?" He hesitated, and in that silence the crowd began to murmur. A shepherd spat in the dirt. "Proof? We don't need it. You bring savages into our towns, you get blood." Nantan's gaze didn't waver. "If you seek blood," he said quietly, "look to the men who profit from it." The tension snapped like a whip. The magistrate barked for calm, but the hatred in the air was thick. Elowen felt it pressing against her chest. The fear, the fury, the ignorance. She stepped forward, her heart pounding. "If you harm this man," she said, her voice ringing clear, "you'll answer to me. He is my husband, and I will stand with him." The words stunned everyone, even Nantan. A hush fell. After a long moment, the magistrate cleared his throat. "All right," he said roughly. "No one's hanging anyone today. But keep your people clear of town, MacLeod. Tensions are high." Nantan nodded once, and the two of them rode out. Only when they were miles from the settlement did Elowen release the breath she'd been holding. "You shouldn't have done that," Nantan said quietly. "They could have turned on you." "I couldn't just stand there," she said, her voice trembling. "I couldn't let them talk about you that way. You've done nothing but protect me." He looked at her then, long and searching. "You spoke like a warrior." She gave a shaky smile. Or maybe just a wife who's tired of being afraid. That night, back at camp, the air between them felt different, charged like lightning waiting to strike. As they sat by the fire, he handed her a cup of sweet heather wine. The flames danced across his face, softening his features. "Why did you defend me, Seabird?" he asked. She met his gaze. "Because I see you, not what they say you are. What you truly are." His eyes darkened and he leaned closer, voice low. "And what do you see?" Her breath caught. "A man who carries more honor in silence than most do in words." He smiled faintly, then looked toward the fire. "You are brave, Elowen Vance. Too brave for this world, maybe." The silence that followed was thick with things neither dared to speak. And in that stillness she realized that the fear she once felt for him had turned to something far more dangerous: trust. Days passed. Peace held, but barely. Then one moonless night, chaos came roaring back. Elowen woke to the smell of smoke and the sound of shouting. The camp was burning. Dwellings aflame, horses screaming in terror, gunshots cracked through the night. She stumbled out of her hut to see masked riders storming the camp, torches in hand. "Nantan!" she screamed. He appeared through the smoke, firing his rifle with deadly precision. "Get back!" he shouted. "Hide!" But before she could move, a blast threw her to the ground. The world spun, fire licking the edges of her vision. When she came to, the camp was chaos. Warriors fighting back with blades and rifles. Women dragging children to safety. Nantan was surrounded. 3 outlaws bore down on him. One striking him across the head with a rifle butt. He fell, dazed, blood streaking his temple. "Leave him!" she cried, running forward. But a hand seized her arm. It was the old woman. "No, Seabird," she said fiercely. "If you die, hope dies too." The words burned. Elowen looked once more toward Nantan, bound, being dragged toward the valley, and made a choice that tore her soul in two. She ran. Through the smoke and the screams, she fled into the moors, clutching only one thing: the small wooden box he had given her. She didn't know where she was going, only that she couldn't let it fall into their hands. By dawn, she collapsed beneath a stone arch, her dress torn, her throat raw from dust. The horizon flamed with sunrise. She pulled the box from her satchel and held it to her chest, weeping. Inside that simple carving lay the last piece of him she had left. She pressed her forehead against it and whispered, "Please, God, don't let that be the end." The island at dawn was a cruel kind of beautiful, quiet as death, vast as eternity. The sun rose over the jagged horizon like molten gold, spilling across the moor and stone, touching the world with fire. Elowen Vance lay beneath a crooked tree, her face streaked with soot and tears, her heart pounding with one terrible truth: Nantan was gone. Captured, bound, dragged away by men who saw him not as a husband or a man, but a target worth hanging. She sat up, her throat dry and burning. The wind carried faint echoes of hooves, distant, fading westward. They were taking him to Portree, she realized. The same town that had spat his name like poison. The magistrate might mean well. But those outlaws were no deputies. They were killers for hire, paid to finish what the shepherds had started, and she was the only one who could stop them. Elowen stood shakily, dust clinging to her torn skirt. Around her neck hung the silver crucifix her father had given her, tarnished now, but still shining faintly in the light. She pressed it once to her lips. "I won't lose him," she whispered to the wind. "Not like this." Her mare, frightened and scraped from the night's chaos, stood tethered nearby, still trembling. Elowen soothed her with a trembling hand. We're going to find him, girl. We're going to bring him home. She saddled the horse with what little strength she had left, tied the wooden box tightly to her satchel, and turned toward the open moors. The ride was agony. The land stretched endless before her, jagged peaks, dry riverbeds, scattered heather. Heat shimmered off the land in waves that twisted the air like smoke. But Elowen rode on, guided only by instinct and the tracks she could still faintly see, hoofprints cutting across the wash. Each mile seemed to strip her of another piece of the girl she once was, the preacher's daughter from the Highlands, the frightened bride who had stepped off the train in a blue dress. What remained was harder, leaner, and carved by the island itself. By midday, the sun was merciless. Her lips cracked, her throat burned, her body screamed for rest. She shaded her eyes and spotted movement in the distance, a column of black smoke rising beyond the valley rim. A campfire, she thought, or worse. Cautiously, she rode closer, the mare's hooves whispering over sand and stone. As she reached the crest of a ridge, she saw them. 5 riders gathered near a cluster of rocks, their horses tethered, rifles glinting in the sun, and tied to a post at the camp's edge. Beaten, bloodied, but alive, was Nantan. Her heart nearly stopped. She slid from her horse and crouched behind a boulder, watching. The outlaws were drinking, laughing. One tossed a tin cup into the fire. Another paced near Nantan, jeering. "Filthy savage," the man spat. "You thought you could outsmart us? We'll fetch a good price for your hide." Nantan said nothing. His head hung low, blood streaking down one cheek. Yet even in defeat, he held himself with the quiet dignity that had first unsettled her. Elowen's hands shook. She had no weapon, only her courage, and the wooden box still strapped to her side. She looked at it now, desperate. It had been his gift, sealed since their wedding night. Something in her heart whispered, "Now!" With trembling fingers, she untied the cord and lifted the lid. Inside lay a folded piece of woven cloth, a sash of crimson and gold, and a letter written in both English and Gaelic. The paper was weathered, the writing precise and firm. "Elowen, if ever you open this, it means the path has tested your heart. You are free, free to leave me and return to your world, or free to stay and make this one your own. I will never bind you, not in body or spirit. This cloth is the mark of a wife among my people, but you may wear it only if you choose me, not from duty, but from love. Nantan MacLeod." Tears blurred the words. For so long she had thought the box a mystery meant to control her, when all along it had been the opposite, a vow of freedom, a gift of choice. Her breath shuddered out. "You fool," she whispered, smiling through tears. "You noble, impossible man." Something fierce and new ignited in her chest. Love, clear, bright and burning as the island sun. She tore a strip from her skirt, tied the crimson sash across her shoulders, and looked toward the camp. "I'm coming, Nantan," she whispered. Then she mounted her horse and rode down into the valley like a ghost from the sun. The first outlaw saw her too late. She charged through their camp, scattering their horses with a scream that made the glens echo. Her mare struck one man square in the chest, sending him sprawling. Elowen snatched up his dropped rifle and fired, the report splitting the silence. Nantan's head jerked up. "Elowen!" She galloped toward him, bullets whining past her ears. One outlaw lunged at her. She swung the rifle butt hard, sending him tumbling into the fire. Flames roared. Nantan, though half-conscious, managed to twist against his bindings. "Cut me loose," he shouted. She slid from the saddle and slashed at the ropes with a knife she'd taken from the fallen man. The last outlaw raised his gun, but before he could fire, a war cry split the air. From the ridges above came the thunder of hooves. Nantan's brother Tassa led a small band of riders down the slope, arrows whistling. The outlaws scattered, overwhelmed. In the chaos, Nantan pulled Elowen behind a rock, shielding her with his body. "Are you hurt?" he asked, voice raw. She shook her head, tears streaking her dust-stained cheeks. "No, but you—" "I'm all right." He looked at her then, seeing the crimson sash tied over her shoulder. His breath caught. "You opened it." She nodded, voice trembling. "I chose you, Nantan. I choose you." For a moment, everything fell away. The gunfire, the smoke, the world. There was only his gaze, fierce and full of wonder. When the fighting ended, Tassa dismounted and approached, blood on his arm, a grin splitting his face. "You have a brave woman, brother," he said. "She rides like the storm." Nantan smiled faintly. "Like the storm and the dawn." Elowen leaned against him, her body finally giving way to exhaustion. His arm wrapped around her, steady and strong. As the last flames died and the wind cooled the valley, she whispered, "I thought I'd lost you." "You can never lose what rides within your heart," he murmured. She looked up at him, eyes shining. Then promise me you'll never ride alone again." He brushed a thumb across her cheek, gentle as the island wind. "Not while you breathe, seabird." They left the valley at sunset, the sky bleeding gold and crimson, the same colors as the sash she wore. Behind them, the tracks of battle faded into dust. Ahead, the road wound back toward home, toward their people, their peace, and whatever future they could carve from the wilderness. That night, as they made camp beneath a starlit sky, Elowen lay beside him, her head on his shoulder, the fire crackling low. "Your gift," she whispered. "It wasn't just freedom, was it?" He smiled softly. "No, it was my heart, given to the one woman strong enough to carry it." And as the island winds sighed through the glens, carrying the scent of smoke and promise, Elowen knew she had found not only her husband, but her destiny. Weeks passed before the island knew peace again. The smoke from that fateful battle drifted away, leaving only the faint scars of fire on the glen walls. Nantan MacLeod healed slowly, the wound on his shoulder turning to a pale scar. Elowen never left his side. For the first time in her 19 years, Elowen Vance felt she belonged, not as a guest, but as part of something larger. Even Tossa, who had once doubted her, bowed his head. "The seabird has fire in her heart," he told the others. One evening, as twilight melted into the valley, she found Nantan sitting near the edge of a cliff. "You should rest," she said softly. "I rest when the land does," he replied. She sat beside him. "Then let them see what love can build. Let them see that peace isn't weakness." He reached into his pouch and drew out a small object, a pendant of silver, shaped like a bird in flight. Elowen looked at it, puzzled. "It's beautiful, but what is it?" "It was once the lock from your wedding box," he said quietly. "I melted it down and shaped it with my hands. Locks keep hearts closed, and yours opened mine." Elowen gasped, tears springing to her eyes. She took the pendant, feeling its warmth. "And what of me? What do I give in return?" He smiled softly. "You've already given it. You stayed." The wind shifted then, carrying the scent of rain. Far off, thunder rolled like the drumbeat of the earth. Elowen rose and looked toward the horizon. "Rain," she whispered. "It's coming." Nantan wrapped an arm around her waist. "The land drinks, and life begins again." When the storm broke, the tribe rejoiced. Elowen laughed among them, the rain soaking her hair and skin. She felt alive, more alive than she had ever been in the narrow pews of her father's kirk. The months that followed brought change. Word of the white bride who had defended her husband spread through the towns. When spring came, the magistrate of Portree rode to the camp with a small escort. He dismounted and approached Nantan. "MacLeod," he said, "I reckon it's time we ended this fight, for good." That night, a celebration was held. Whites and islanders sat side by side, breaking bread, trading stories. Elowen wore the silver bird around her neck. When Nantan led her before the people, he raised his voice. "Once I took a wife for peace, but this woman taught me otherwise. Elowen Vance of the Highlands, a seabird who rides with fire. Will you stand with me again, not as a bride of treaty, but as a wife of choice?" Her heart swelled. "I will." He placed the pendant against her chest. "Then let all who hear the wind know, our hearts are one." Cheers rose around them, voices mingling into one song. Later, as the fires burned low, Elowen and Nantan walked together to the edge of the cliff. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked softly. "That letter you sent?" He smiled. "Only that I did not send it sooner." She leaned into him. "Then we both found what we were meant to." Below them, the islands stretched silent and infinite. Elowen Vance knew the truth she would carry for the rest of her days. She had not been forced into a marriage. She had been led to a destiny, one written in the language of the land, sealed with the rain, and crowned by a gift of the heart that left everyone who heard their story utterly speechless. If you enjoyed this cinematic journey through the Highland frontier, don't forget to share, like, and subscribe for more epic love stories.